An urban legend is a story, whether humorous or scary, that is based on hearsay and widely circulated as true. But every story has some truth, even if it is a fine grain of sand. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Between Monsters and Men. Before we start on my new series, I would like to admit there are a couple of series I'd like to start very soon. My videos would be scatterbrained in a fact that I do not have a schedule of what comes up first. For example, if I did a serious killers on one Tuesday and a monsters another, doesn't mean it will rotate as such. I have many books and sources on different interests for this series, and I am too excited to pick a lineup for them. I pick by random unless requested. With that said, let's begin this video. There are thousands of urban legends around the world. Some are called stories, myths, and folklore. They spread like wildfire, but most don't realize they stem from some sort of truth. And though they may be exaggerated, we should always be alert in the dark and with the unknown. The Hookman is, or was, one of the most infamous urban legends in North America. Now, with the new generation, the story of the Hookman is seen mostly as a cinematic story made by directors to entertain us. Not many know that the Hookman is based off of a real killer. This urban legend dates back to the mid-1950s, but had gained a greater acknowledgement when the story was reprinted in an advice column of Dear Abby in 1960. A young teenage couple drove to Lover's Lane for a chance of a makeout section. The boy turned on the radio for mood music, and they began their intimate pursuit. Minutes passed, and the music stopped. A reporter comes on and warns of a convicted murderer has escaped from the state insane asylum, which was located half a mile from where they were parked. The reporter urges that if anyone who notices a man wearing a stainless steel hook in place of his right hand should report his whereabouts immediately. The girl became frightened, and they left. When they arrived at the girl's house, she got out of the car, and then when she went to close it, she noticed on the handle of the car was a bloody hook. This is the most popular version of the Hookman legend. From the site Urban Legends Online brings a little more detail to this very popular version. That it was a summer night in Pennsylvania where this had occurred, and the Hookman was a murderer who escaped from Allentown State Hospital. The reason why he had a hook for a hand was due to his own fit of madness, where he hacked off his hand in order to escape a pair of handcuffs years earlier. There is an Allentown State Hospital in Pennsylvania, and it was used as an insane asylum. It is said to be haunted. I found no links to the Hookman in Pennsylvania other than this one from the site. Most of the rest of the variations of the legend of Hookman stems from this very popular version, but the endings always vary. The couple spots the Hookman and try to escape. However, the murderer holds onto the roof of the car and eventually kills them. The boyfriend gets out of the car to relieve himself, or the car broke down and he goes for help. But while his girlfriend waits for him, she hears the radio broadcast. After, she starts hearing a scratching noise on the roof of the car. She gets out and finds her boyfriend hanging from the tree, and his feet making the scraping sound on the roof of the car. A slightly different tale of this version is that he was hanging from his feet, and his fingernails were scraping along the roof of the car. Within this version also comes a more gruesome tale. The girlfriend hears a thumping sound from the roof. When she gets out, she finds the Hookman sitting on the roof, banging her boyfriend's severed head onto the metal. The tale I'm about to tell you now, I am very skeptical about. I'll explain why after I tell it. This variation is different from the popular story that the rest has stemmed from, where the Hookman goes to the college dorms to murder sexually active students instead. The murder takes place while the victim's virgin roommate is asleep, and in the morning she wakes to find a message on the wall that says, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" written in the victim's blood. Firstly, this post comes from the site called Ranker, which will be listed down below in the description. The post was posted in 2016 to 2017. The reason why I'm critical of this post is because it is exact act that is played in Supernatural, the TV show, the show that aired in 2005. This is the only site that posts this version. Supernatural is an extremely popular TV show that features different cryptids, ghosts, etc., but they always tell a slightly different version of the tales to spiderweb them to their own story and give them their own personality. So this tale isn't credible for me, especially since the quote the Hookman wrote on the wall is a slightly tweaked quote another urban legend uses in its own story. This variation of the legend comes from Can of Mystery. In Seymour, Connecticut, there is a cemetery called Great Hill Cemetery, also known as Hookman's Cemetery. Apparently in the 1800s, there was a cemetery caretaker who had a hook for a hand. He hung himself from a tree outside the cemetery. If you park under the tree, your car will stall and you'll hear the hook scratching on the roof of your car. This is a very interesting version of the Hookman, since the stories on this is more of a haunting case than an urban legend. When I started looking up this version, I had to stop. I don't find these two linked together because I only found one or two apparent experiences relating to this Hookman in a threatening way or noises. The cemetery is a hot spot for paranormal activity, and thusly I stopped so I can make a video on it specifically. But I do not believe it is linked to the urban legend, especially since majority of the activity has to do with orbs or other ghostly activities. Now, the site I learned of this version from did not post what I just told you. I found this on a separate site. What Can a Mystery states was that in the 1940s, the story began to grow about a caretaker who with a hook that lived on the property. In one tale, the man was accused of murder, and since then, he haunts the cemetery. The site itself had many grammatic errors, but they did cite 6 books as their sources, none of which I had read. I can believe their sources are true, but on the fact that it's not connected to the Hookman urban legend, but instead of a cemetery haunting. I will put Can of Mystery site in the description as well, so you can make your own opinions. On November 8th, 1960, the Dear Abby article printed in the advice column a statement. A woman named Jeanette sent it. Dear Abby, if you are interested in teenagers, you will print this story. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it doesn't matter, because it served its purpose for me. A fellow and his date pulled into their favorite Lover Lane to listen to the radio and do a little necking. The music was interrupted by an announcer, who said that there was an escaped convict in the area who had served time for rape and robbery. He was described as having a hook instead of a right hand. The couple became frightened and drove away. When the boy took the girl home, he went around to open the door for her. Then he saw a hook on the door handle. I will never park to make out as long as I live. I hope this does the same for other kids. Jeanette. With the strange story circulating for years, with no telling at first where it came from, people have come to conclusions as to why it spread around. A Freudian interpretation of the story is that the hook found on the door that was severed from the killer's hand represents castration. The boyfriend is trying to have sex when the radio comes on and interrupts him. His girlfriend stops him and wants to go home, ultimately leading the story to warn against having sex. The interpretation tells of a man's fears of being emasculated. Folklorist Bill Ellis thinks that the legend teaches a lesson to prying and self-righteous adults, and not to teenagers. He thinks the Hookman's disability represents his lack of sexuality. Others just believe it is a warning to not have sex, especially before the prime age and at the prime time of marriage. One can truly lose their life if giving into this temptation, from early pregnancy or STDs. Probably the most closely related to the urban legend and the very real Hookman would be the Phantom Killer. Without getting too deep into the killings, for that is another time, the Phantom Killer was an unidentified murderer who killed 5 people and wounded 3, spanning from February 22nd, 1946 to May 3rd, 1946, 4 years before the Hookman legend started. The first and second couple was attacked while parked on the secluded road known as Lover's Lane. However, none of the killings were done by a hook. It was most closely related to the story to the Hookman. Once the word gets out, stories can be exaggerated and twisted into incredible different stories, but unlike those, these two match up pretty well, except for the weapon of choice. I do believe that urban legends are stories that came from a point in time that have been real, such as the Hookman could have been real, but his story and the events that occurred have been tweaked to make it more fantastic when told and less human. Within the modern day, the Hookman is less heard of around campfires and seen more on the cinematic screen. The stigma had died down significantly and doesn't put as much fear in teenagers today. If you like to watch or read anything inspired by the Hookman legend, here are a few. 1997, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Stephen King's Dance Macabre, 1992 Candyman, 2005 Supernatural Season 1 Episode 7, and 1998 Urban Legend are just a few. I hope you enjoyed. Due to YouTube demonetizing videos like mine, feel free to check out my Patreon page and become part of the family. I create videos on cryptids, paranormal, abductions, serious killers, and more. I'd like to also thank my supporting Patreon thus far. Also, please like, comment, and subscribe.